So that's Genesis in a very brief, abridged form, which you may go back to. I'm always happy to go back to Genesis. And there's a lot of other stuff in there which might come up. I think one thing we can say, one thing I hope we can say, is that the basic story of the garden in Genesis is, if nothing else, it's relatable. It should be relatable. It's meant to be relatable, because even if you don't believe in God, even if you don't believe in the garden, the Bible, if you hate religion, there's got to be some, I'd like to believe there's got to be some part of all of us that acknowledges that we want to do things, we want to do the right thing sometimes, and we can't do it. There's something in us that says to do the wrong thing. We want to do the wrong thing, and that's a mix of things, mostly selfish motives, but I think for that reason, the story of the garden in Genesis has to be somewhat relatable. But we're going to move on to something else now, and I want to talk briefly, because it's late and I'm tired, about commitment, worship, what we worship. Everyone worships something, and I've gotten into trouble for saying that before. People don't like it. People don't like to be told that they worship something. Worship is associated with religion. A lot of people hate religion, and therefore if you say that everyone worships something, a lot of people hear that as they somehow subscribe to religion without knowing about it, or they subscribe to belief in God without knowing about it. But like I said, I've just come back from a monastery, and these monks, you don't spend some time in a monastery and then leave a monastery. Once you go into a monastery, once you become a monk, you're there for life. It's a lifelong commitment. I was speaking to one of them who said it's akin to a marriage. He's made vows to be there lifelong, but which is crazy to me. The life of a monk is a very, very attractive life, but maybe not forever, or at least the duration of their lifespan. And they showed us the graveyard that they have outside the monastery, which is where the monks go. They go in there and they stay their whole life there, and they die and are buried in the monk or the monastery graveyard. These monks don't give a vow to the monastery. They don't give a commitment to the monastery. The commitment they're making is to God and to their pursuit and their dedication of pursuing what we'd call is pursuing God, pursuing a relationship with God, getting to know God more, understanding Him more. And we can never know Him or understand Him completely, but we can definitely take steps and adopt practices to know God more, because fundamental to Christian belief is the belief that God is relational, and that's super important, and we're going to come back to that in other videos, I'm sure, because that's so important, that there's a relationship that can exist between God and people, and it's a very intimate relationship. But it begs the question, what do we worship? What do we commit our lives to? What have we made vows to, whether we know it, whether we did it consciously or subconsciously? What have we committed ourselves to? And we can commit ourselves to all kinds of negative things, or all kinds of, very similar to an addiction. We can worship and pursue all manner of different, toxic pursuits. I mean, the obvious ones are money or fame, but there's second or third level ones, which we're not always aware of. The need to be liked, the need to be comfortable, and these things can motivate our entire lives. And some of them aren't intrinsically bad, but it's good to be aware of. It's good to be aware of the things that drive our life forward, that we pursue above all else, even if we can't articulate that. I mean, most people would say happiness, success, love are things that motivate us, but there's always something under the surface that's pulling us forward. And I think we need to take time to reflect on what those things are, and if they are truly worthwhile, or in what sense can they let us down? In what sense can we put all our hopes and expectations into these things, which I would classify as worship, that we can actually bow down to in a metaphorical sense, but they're going to let us down at some point. So as I come back from the monastery, I'm thinking about a very clear-cut commitment, very black and white commitment that these monks have made to God, to be present in the monastery. Yeah, that's just something to reflect on this evening.